This sings to my heart. Some boss fights are really bad. I just want to start off by saying the Juhei fight, in my opinion, is trash. I just think it's a badly designed fight. Personally, I've heard some people saying, you know, you can negate that part of it, and you can do this and you can do that, and it makes the fight less frustrating. But I think if a fight's designed like that, and it's not about overcoming things via skill, or it's a difficulty thing, I think to make a fight less annoying, less boring by you having to do certain things, just means that the fight's kind of boring and it's kind of frustrating. And I'm not a big fan of the Juhei fight at all, which is sad because I think it looks cool, and I was waiting for it for ages. And the Geo Chalone fight is so annoying because the camera angle when you're trying to play in that fight is frustrating. Sometimes it feels better not to lock on to the character at all, and you end up getting stuck inside it and clipping under it, and it's not a hard fight. Neither of them are hard fights at all. They're just not very good fights. So let's see what he's got to say. Some boss fights are really bad. I would in fact say, I'd go as far as saying terrible, in my opinion.
One thing's for certain when it comes to Wuthering Waves. This combat feels good. With a wide variety of different
Can't say that though, because otherwise you're a shill. You're a glazer.
abilities across every character in the game, and a ton of skill-based mechanics, it's easily one of the most engaging we've seen in the gacha genre.
I agree.
But what if you fought enemies that didn't let you use any of these tools? One of the most unfortunate parts of a combat system that
I knew this fucker was coming into it.
relies on the actions of enemies and the
Do you know what makes it worse as well? Not only is it like the camera angle, and it's just like, I think it's just because of the size of it that's a problem. It's that the dude takes ages to spawn in, and then when you don't get an echo drop from him, the dude dies like he's in a Bollywood film. He's just like, oh, and then collapses. And it's like, one thing for these sort of bosses, in my opinion, the game could do with is like a bait system where you could like collect so much bait every now and again. Not infinite, but you could use them. So when you're in these, like, you know, the calamity level fights, you could use the bait and it makes the enemy spawn instantaneously. So you don't have to wait for that period of time for it to spawn back in, kind of thing. Because especially with the Geo Chalone, it gets really frustrating. Add on him spawning in and then him dying. It's just really long.
reactions of players to succeed is that bad enemies or bad enemy design can really impact a player's ability to enjoy the game. Even the best games within the action RPG genre, applauded for their combat systems, can't escape this problem. Sometimes,
I think at the end of the day as well, if you have multiple boss fights or elite type fights in a game, there's gonna be some that miss the mark, aren't there? I think if you're gonna have a lot of them, not everyone is gonna be perfect or even great or even good. You know, there's gonna be some that's just like, oh, dude, do we have to do this again kind of fight? Like, you know what I mean? Some will be because of just pure difficulty, and others will just because, dude, this fight fucking sucks.
the devs do a little bit too much cooking when it comes to their boss design. What this ultimately means is that regardless of how well your game is designed, bad enemies can bring a lot.
It's like the fight ends up being 3 times as long because you spend freaking 60% of the match chasing the little fucker around.
Of that enjoyment down. And Wuthering Waves has quite a few bad bosses. It's not that all of these bosses hit extremely hard or are way too tanky. The problem is that these bosses have a huge number of built-in mechanics.
I hate that breath attack that it does as well. The amount of times that you get caught by that when it's like, dude, I swear that did not touch me there. Like, the hitbox seems a mile off kind of thing. Like, I don't know if that's just me, maybe I'm just bad.
Across their phases that make a player's experience against them a bit unappealing. Today we'll be discussing why this is the case, breaking down where the fights against these enemies falls short, why they disrupt the flow of typically fantastic combat, and why many of these enemies, if we ever see them in time-constrained endgame content, should see some adjustments to their movesets to make them far more palatable in that kind of setting. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button.
I must admit, I really do like Saitonta's content because it comes with information, you know, that he's actually took the time to look into, but he also comes with ideas for fixes as well, and it's nice to see. And the dude is a lot more eloquent and intelligent than me as well, so it allows me to bounce off it and go, ooh, That's a good idea. I'm gonna pretend I came up with that.
One of the worst experiences you can have in a game with combat as fluid and decision-driven as Wuthering Waves
Hate those
is
whirlwind
not
things
being
as
able
well.
to do something that you want to do. It could be parrying, dodging, or just hitting the enemy to build up Concerto or Resonance energy. Enemies that restrict your decision-making are tough to deal with, and oftentimes these restrictions can feel absurd compared to the challenge that these enemies provide. The first example that comes to mind should be fresh in players' memories, and that's the most recent weekly boss, Jue. I think
Trash.
they maybe should have playtested this boss a
Yep,
bit more.
trash.
Jue absolutely takes the cake as the most annoying boss in the game. While they have an incredibly captivating design, a beautiful
exactly.
arena, and
Yeah, exactly. That's the shame. That's the big thing for me about it, because I am very aesthetically driven as well. I love the design of Juhei. I just think it is such a cool design. And the arena that you fight him in as well. Dude, it's gorgeous. But you don't take any of that in, because it's just like, this fight's so annoying.
brilliant visual effects, you can't use any of these great adjectives to describe their moveset. With long, drawn-out attacks, incredibly lengthy animations, and an absurd amount of camera panning as this lizard snakes across your screen, it's almost impossible to tell what is going on with this boss, even with a ranged character on field doing damage.
Yep.
If the DPS you're bringing is a melee character, this
And I'm fine with them trying to design boss battles as well. Or enemies that are really kind of catered for the range character as well. That's fine. It's just, it's not it, man. It's just not it with this. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's just not it.
boss moves incredibly fast and dodges better than Rexland. It's easier than it should be to completely whiff your entire rotation because the boss decided
Yep.
to charge to the other side of the
Exactly.
arena. And this is all while Jue is on the ground and actually hittable. This boss, like quite a few others, has the ability to fly. And wow, do they fly. Through a combination of fast
This dude
movement,
legit flies,
effective
though. He
invulnerability
goes so
in the
freaking
air,
high.
and constant camera panning, Jue is a fight where players spend more time running around than
Yep.
actually using their abilities and attacks.
To me, that's just fundamentally a bad fight. Now, if it's a cinematic fight, like when you first fight him, and part of the fight is moving from a different area, and it's all part of the cinematic effect to pull you in, I'm cool with that, you know, where you're moving from area to area. But when it's something you have to do over and over again, you're like, dude, I just want to clear this to get my materials to do something with my character, and the fight's taking twice, 3 times as long as it should do. Not because it's difficult either, just because it's like long. Yeah, it's not good at all. I really hope this gets a redesign rapidly. This needs a major redesign, and it needs to happen soon as well.
Coming from typical boss fights where you're chaining together attacks across your characters and weaving in your intro and outro skills, it feels like you're playing a different game. And that game is worse than Wuthering Waves. Jue isn't the only weekly boss with some frustrating elements to their fight. The bell-borne Geochalone, often grinded for its healing bonus set, literally cannot be damaged.
And that's the thing as well. It's for what you want as well, the healing bonus. It drops so... It's such a rare drop that, like, man, it makes it even worse because you have to spend so much time on the dude if you really want to get the good drop. And that just adds to the frustration as well.
For the first 10 or 15 seconds of
Yep.
its fight. And this feels like an eternity when you're grinding it for echoes. With the turtle's baseline attacks being one of the slowest to come out and easiest to dodge in the game, this wait is where most of the fight's difficulty actually is.
True.
However, boss behavior like this isn't completely unexpected. We've seen this before across other flying bosses, like the Impermanence Heron and the Morning Ikes. Anybody experienced with these?
They are, but it's just... It's a lot smaller part of the fight. Maybe a little bit more with the Impermanence Heron. Because there's a lot of attacks where he ends up, especially if you're pushed up to the side and he does his jump. Sometimes you end up taking damage because you can't angle the camera. Like, he goes off camera kind of thing. But it's still nowhere near as frustrating as with Juhei. Because he just spends majority of the time away from it. It's just sometimes this becomes a little bit more rage-inducing, especially if you're doing holograms, because you take damage and you're like, fuck, that was all down to the camera.
These hologram bosses has likely lost quite a bit of sanity dealing with the Heron's flamethrower from the skies or the
Yep.
Ikes' bizarre adventure in the air. These are attacks that are hard to deal with, and most importantly, eat up a huge amount of time as they make the boss almost impossible to effectively damage. Kuro thankfully identified that this would be a massive problem in time-constrained content like the Tower of Adversity. What they did was just completely remove these attacks from the movesets of the Heron and the Ikes, heavily streamlining the gameplay experience across these fights by limiting those invulnerability phases and letting players actually engage with the game's amazing combat.
Which was a good move as well. Like, props to them for doing that.
Systems. Other games in the gacha action RPG genre? Well, they just let you experience all of the bullshit firsthand. Just look at this monstrosity. I genuinely cannot believe that Genshin's Weenut was okayed in the Abyss with gameplay that looks like this. However, there can be a downside to these balancing adjustments being made on behalf of the player. We saw this play out live with the adaptation of Scar, another weekly boss fight like Jue, into the Tower of Adversity. Scar is a weekly boss with a moveset consisting of wide delayed swings, big hitboxes, and no parryable attacks. However,
I think the only issue with that though was potentially the no parryables, but I don't think they needed to pull him back the way they did. They just needed to add some parryables in there or make the attacks parryable like they are, because I'm pretty sure in just the standard content, they're all parryable, aren't they? Or pretty much all of them are.
However, he has one extremely large opening across his kit where he slams into the ground and then rushes forward with a grab attack that does a huge amount of damage. This grab is the only move in his kit that's actually parryable. Successfully countering this attack is one of the biggest benefits you can have in the fight, potentially dealing a huge amount of damage to his stagger bar and leaving him vulnerable to more attacks during that downtime. While balancing this boss for the Tower of Adversity and keeping the player experience top of mind, Kuro wanted to remove the frustration of potential one-shots from this grab attack by just removing it entirely. But they unfortunately introduced another problem where the boss no longer has any parryable attacks.
Yeah, see, like, I just think the way they went about it wasn't the best way. I understand they were trying to change things up a little bit, but I just think they went about it the wrong way, to be fair.
And that means there's a lot less downtime to actually, well, damage him. Sometimes, in the effort to solve one problem, you create another. But as we've all come to understand, Kuro is a company that actively listens to feedback.
You can tell they designed him with like Souls-like games in mind, can't you?
To make
You
it
really
a bit
can.
easier for players. When it's time for bosses like Jue or Dreamless to enter the tower, we can only hope that Kuro can learn from some of these mistakes to make these fights a more enjoyable experience.
I'm curious to see how Jue is going to work in the tower. I'm assuming all of the running away is going to be gone, but still, I'm curious to see how the fight's going to work. I feel like it's going to be, I don't know, is the arena going to change because like the size of him as well? I just feel like it's not going to be the most enjoyable fight, not because of difficulty. It's just going to be an unwieldy fight, if that makes sense.
Especially considering their 2-minute time limit for full rewards. It's not like we need these fights to be strictly easier. However, spending several seconds staring at the sky, waiting for the boss to come down,
that's definitely not going to be there just because of the size of the arena, unless they change
these fights to be better. Hopefully, this overview was helpful in highlighting some of the worst boss mechanics in the game and how Kuro streamlined their fights in specific content.
Because, like, dude, look at these attacks. They look so freaking cool, but they're not fun. You know, I think this was like, all of these sort of things were really cool for Juhei in the cinematic part of the game, but for a reoccurring boss fight, they're not fun. They're not fun at all.
Experience. While they may have missed the mark in some areas, it's great knowing that they're keeping player enjoyment top of mind as they develop content.
And I can't knock them too much because of all the content in the game, those two for me are just unfun. There's frustrations that happen with other boss fights, but typically I usually can be like, right, I kind of knew that this is a thing with a fight and I put myself in that position, so it kind of ultimately I can bring it back to myself in a way. With those two, it's just not that. It's just that this is not that great in terms of design, personally.
For this game. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button.
Yeah, great video. Great video. Dude always makes good content. I really do enjoy his videos. agreed. Both of those fights are trash in my opinion. The Geochalone for farming is just a pain in the arse. The length of time that it takes for him to spawn in, and again, when you get an echo drop, he dies quick. But when you don't, he has that long drawn out animation. It's just like, bro, come on, just die already so you can spawn back in and I can carry on with what I'm doing. It's such a pain to farm. They're both really annoying to farm. When I'm doing building a character and I know I've got to get that match, it's like, oh, I've got to go and fight that dickhead again. Really not a fan of those. But I'm a big fan of Saint Tontass's videos. You should definitely check him out. Dude deserves way more subscribers.